taking a look at a new Microsoft Teams room system, certified for Microsoft Teams, of course, from Poly, the G40-T. The G40-T consists of the GC8, which is your center of room touch controller, the Poly Studio for your camera, microphone, and speakers, and the Lenovo ThinkSmart Tiny Edition for your compute. And for that modern, sleek-looking conference room experience, there is an optional wall mount kit with cable management that you can use for mounting the Lenovo compute. In this video, we'll be reviewing the various components, going over how to set it all up, taking a look at how to sign into the device, manage it in the Teams Admin Center, and finally, the Microsoft Teams meeting experience using the G40-T. Let's dig in. The Poly G40-T room system consists of several components, starting with the Poly Studio at the back here for our audio and video. We also have the remote control below. We have the Poly GC8 for our touch interface that sits at the center of the table. For our compute, we have the Lenovo ThinkSmart Edition Tiny. This gives us various ports on the front and back, making sure that we have compute for the overall system. Taking a look right back here, you'll notice the optional wall mounting kit, giving us a stylish and sleek appearance to tuck all our cabling and compute into to make sure that it can be mounted to a wall somewhere and still maintain a modern wireless looking appearance in the room for the room system. We'll be going over setting up the optional wall mount in a follow-up video, so be sure to check back for that very soon. The Poly GC8 is our center of room touch console. It gives us an 8-inch LED backlit screen with a 60-degree positioning angle and 170 degrees viewing angle. The resolution is 1280 by 800. At the very front of the device, we have the PIR motion sensor. At the back of the device, we have a cable management system that allows us to tuck away our connections inside of the device. Don't forget about our Kensington lock slot as well. We covered the Poly Studio in a previous video, so I will defer to that video with a link in the upper corner of this video for more details on the Poly Studio. But again, this gives us our audio and video with built-in microphones and speakers. At the very front, on the underneath of the camera itself, there is a little toggle button down here that allows you to activate a privacy shutter for your camera. Taking a look at the back, you will also notice that the stand is optional. This is if you plan on setting the device on a flat surface. There is a mounting system back here with an optional mounting plate. It can be used for mounting the camera, the whole sound bar, on the wall in an optimal position for a room. And on the left-hand side, you'll notice our ports are tucked into the very side here with labeling for which port is what. The Lenovo ThinkSmart Edition Tiny has an Intel Core i5 processor with a 2.3 GHz CPU. The operating system is Microsoft Windows 10 Enterprise IoT, of course, and there is 8 gigs of memory installed, upgradable to 32 gig max. The hard drive is a 120 gig solid-state drive. In addition to using the optional wall mount kit, which again we'll go into later, you have rubber grips on one side of the device, allowing it to sit down on a surface and sit there firmly without moving around too much. Our interfaces on the front include a USB 3.1 Gen 2 port, a USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type-C port, a microphone jack, and then a headphone microphone combo jack. Our interfaces at the back of the device include 2 USB 3.1 Gen 2 ports, 2 USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports, a display port, 2 HDMI ports, and finally our RJ45 Ethernet connection. And our connection over here on the very left is for attaching an antenna. A 10 meter or nearly 32-foot cable is provided that gives you USB Type-A to USB Type-C conversion. It is USB 3.1 Gen 2, and this is a strong reinforced cable as it needs to bridge a rather large gap potentially from the middle of the room to the front of the room. Okay, let's get the GC8 all plugged in, shall we? To remove the cable cover from the bottom, you simply press in on these two indentions and slide the cover forward. It pops out. Don't need to press too hard. We move it off to the side. Now, I have already removed this metal cable guide from here for the sake of time. But you can see this goes right here, holds the cables in place. On this side, there are 4 spots for the cables to sit to help guide them to the proper slot. And we are going to reapply this once we have all of our cables in place. Looking at our ports again, we've got our power over on the right-hand side. We've got our USB-C port that we're going to be plugging our 10-meter strong cable into to connect the device up to the Lenovo Compute. And then we've got this mini HDMI cable that is an HDMI cable sitting at the table for us to plug into our laptop if we want to share our desktop in a meeting. Let's start plugging things in. First up, we've got the USB-C port. Now, the one downside to these strong cables is that when you are working in a small, tight area like this, these cables are strong and they don't have a lot of give. So you kind of got to line it up the best you can. Next up, our power goes over on the right-hand side here, slides right in. And finally, our mini HDMI cable. Similar shape to your HDMI port, it's just a little smaller for the space. The other end of the cable is a full HDMI port, and we will use that for connecting laptops for sharing our desktop. Let's go ahead and get that plugged in there. Okay, it's in. Now, what we're gonna do for simplicity, and so that all these cables are hanging in their natural place, is flip this thing upside down. Okay, so you'll notice we flipped this upside down and set it on the edge of the table so that the cables can lay naturally out their own slots, and it'll make it easier when using this metal bracket to hold each cable in place and get it screwed into this port here. Everything's got to line up just so, and when this is in there, we want the surface of this to be flush with these white spots here so that we have nothing getting stuck or caught when we reapply our plastic base to the bottom of the device. So again, little slots here, get them all lined up to our cables. We are not using the optional peripheral USB cable here for other types of devices. Let's get them firmly on each space. Again, it should be flush when it's all done. All of our cables should be out the correct slot. And once we've got everything lined up in there, looks like we do, we can start tightening down the screw. Okay, we've got the screw tightened down. You'll notice all the cables are where they go, but I did not get my power cable in there properly. All right, we got that in place now. Okay, everything is plugged in. Cables are coming out where they should. We are sitting flush with the metal bracket, and we can reapply the plastic bottom. And we've got a space. You can see where the cables should go in each of these spots. Let's get it all lined up. Everything looks lined up out there. We'll slide our cable over, slide this cable over, and slide it back in. It's now in place. Cables are coming out where they should be. We are in business from the GC8 perspective. Looking at the back of our Poly Studio, we're going to be plugging in a USB cable with USB-C right up top here. And we will be running the cable through our little cable management piece right here at the back so that our cables aren't visible coming down the sides of the device itself. Flipping the device around, we've got our power. Let's get the power plugged in. And again, we want to hide our cables, so we'll tuck this in right over here, keeping our power cable and USB cable from showing. They will both be tucked behind our metal plate here. Bringing it all together, we've got the Lenovo ThinkSmart Edition Tiny right here, and we'll go ahead and get our antenna screwed in right up top. So there is a little component right here that we just screw into place. There we go, antenna is screwed in. Next up, we'll take our power cable. Now, this is quite a bit different than the other power cables, pretty hard to mistake. So we're gonna put this in right over here. Clearly, yellow goes with yellow. Thank you for making that easy for us, Lenovo. Here we've got the other end of that super long 10-meter strong USB cable. We plug the USB-C component or end into the GC8, and we'll be plugging the USB-A side of it into our Lenovo here. So let's go ahead, plug it in. Next up, we've got the USB coming out of our Poly Studio. And finally, for the displays in the room, we've got 2 HDMI ports here. We're only going to use one display today, so let's go ahead and plug that in right down at the bottom. And with everything all plugged in, from our compute over on the right to our center of room GC8 console and the studio on the very left, let's get things powered on. Once it is plugged in, it takes minutes to power on, but we get some lights flashing, camera's waking up, and it's time to power on the rest of the devices. It's kind of hard to tell with the exposure, but this is actually a dim green light up top. Next up, we plug in the GC8 center of room touch console. As soon as we get it plugged on, the screen comes on, and with our GC8 powered on and our Poly Studio powered on and our display powered on, we'll plug in the Lenovo Compute and press the power button on the front of the device, and that will get our room system up and running. As the Lenovo powers up, we can see that the Microsoft Teams app is already loading, reflected on both screens. Looking at the GC8, we have a Microsoft software license terms that come up, the EULA, and we can see we've got the typical MTR background on our display up top. Coming back down to our EULA, we'll go ahead, click the box, after you've read all this, of course, and then click Next. Up here, we can sign in with our account. Now, typically, you want to make this an account that is a room account, right? Not an individual account. I've got a video on creating room accounts, licensing them properly, setting them up for what you need them to be. I'm going to link to that in the upper corner of the video here. But for all intents and purposes, we are just using my own personal account to get logged in and demonstrate the use of the MTR today. The password and username put in. We have our supported meeting mode down here, and we're going to say that this is Skype for Business, but Microsoft Teams is the default. And Modern Auth can be used for signing in if we want to. We'll go ahead and flip that on. And if we need to assign any other details here, domain, username, that's optional. We don't need to put anything else for signing in. It says congratulations. Let's click Finish. Once you're logged in, you'll notice that you have your information in the upper right-hand corner here. Any meetings that you have scheduled will be over here on the left-hand side. Depending on the licensing of the room account that you're signed in with, and again, I am using a personal account here, but I recommend using a room account for a room system. You have your new meeting option, your presenting capabilities in case you want to present via the HDMI cable that is attached to the GC8. And then you've got a dial pad if you have PSTN capabilities here. Click on the dial pad, we'll see that we can dial a number. Coming back out, if we click on More, we can invite the room up top. We have accessibility options. We can restart the device or go to Settings. So we get into our settings. You'll see we've got a number of things, just like you would notice from other room systems. We've got our about information that'll give us our IP addresses, the Windows version, the app version, the account information here. We put that in to sign in. And then the advanced information if we had put anything, skipped meetings. For the options in our meetings, you'll notice we have automatic screen sharing, toggled on, show meeting names, toggled on, leave meetings automatically if everyone else is left. Kind of a handy setting in case someone forgets to sign out of the meeting and everyone leaves the room. And then third-party meetings. This stuff is new down here, very cool. We can join a Cisco WebEx meeting from our Microsoft Teams room system, as well as a Zoom meeting that gets scheduled using this room. This is in preview, but really cool new functionality. Going back out to our device, you'll notice that we have dual monitor mode up top that we can turn on. We're not using dual monitors, so that's all right. We've got Bluetooth beaconing enabled so that we can detect this room with Bluetooth and join it from a mobile device. Automatically accept proximity-based meeting invitations. So if Bluetooth beaconing is turned on, it'll automatically accept the request to join that proximity-based meeting. And then of course you can send logs for feedback to Microsoft or to whoever. Coordinated meetings. This is a brand new option. If you turn this on, then you're allowed to join more than one MTRs to the meeting. Pretty cool stuff. Peripherals, this is where you'll select all of the appropriate devices for what you're going to be using in the room. In our case, we're using a Poly Studio, so I'm going to change these to say Poly Studio. There we go. And if we go ahead and play the speakers, we can hear that coming right out of a Poly Studio. Then we come down to select a theme. You can choose different themes. I'm not going to do that. And finally, if you are an admin and need to manage the device further, you can click on Windows Settings, put in the admin password, and that takes you into Manage Things with Windows IoT, which is the operating system behind the Skype app that we are signed into now. Teams app that we are signed into now with the Skype account. Since we're not going to go in there and do that at this point, we're going to go ahead and click Save and Exit. Before I do that, you'll notice this Reset Device. This will reset us to our original status. Don't want to do that. We want to Save and Exit. Back in the Microsoft Teams Admin Center, we have this handy newish Microsoft Teams Room section for devices. You'll notice that we've got a couple devices in here. One is offline. I haven't removed it yet. This was the previous video we did on the Lenovo Hub 500. And now we are focusing on our Poly G40-T video, and we can see the GC8 sitting right in here. I'm going to go ahead. You can see here GC8 is the model of the device. Manufacturer is Poly. And it's giving the display name of my name because and my username because we're not using a room account, we're using my personal account. Again, not recommended. That is also what shows up in here because of the account signed in. The reason you don't want to do it with a personal account, it's fine for testing, just not production, is that when you come down here to activity, it'll actually show you all the activity from your own personal calls rather than just the calls that are taking place through the room system. This data is tied to the account that's signed in rather than the device itself. Keep that in mind. Looking at the device up top, we get an overview at the very top of our dashboard, our 7-day call quality. This is representative of the fact that my account had a poor call rather than the device, so no big deal there. We come on down, and I like this. We can see all the peripherals plugged in right off the bat. We've got our GC8 is where that HDMI is coming in from. The compute is our Lenovo. We have a Poly Studio that is used for the camera and the speakers, conferencing speakers, microphone, that's all coming through the Poly Studio as well. And then finally, we've got a display coming in there. Jumping over to health, you can see that everything in our peripheral section is listed as connected. That's all fine and good. The connectivity over here is all good on the network side, as well as our services in Microsoft 365, Exchange, Skype for Business, and Microsoft Teams. And then finally, our software health down here. We've got the version of the Teams Admin Agent, the Microsoft Teams Room app, and our Windows operating system. Coming over to details, we get a few things like IP address, serial number, manufacturer and model, and if you had assigned any asset tags, that'd be here as well. I already touched on activity. History will show you other things that have been done with this device. Coming back to the main part here, if we click on Actions in the upper right-hand corner, this is where you can manage your tags and assign them, and you can block the device as well as remove the device. If we go to Edit Settings, I love this because this is what was set, what we modified and took a look at on the GC8 itself. We could modify the account, and you can do that here. You can choose what mode it's running in. You can choose to turn on Modern Auth or not. Then you can choose the Exchange address and other username domain stuff as well. Meetings, all these same settings that we saw on the device are here as well. So if someone needs us to change this, we can do it from here. Let's say you're in one geographic location and they need to be able to start doing Zoom meetings on a device in another geographical location. You can come to the Teams Admin Center and change that right here and apply the change. On the device, you have your dual monitor mode, Bluetooth beaconing, again, all the same stuff. If we need to change the peripherals, let's say audio is not working as expected in the room and it's because they have a wrong microphone assigned, potentially something that's not in the room anymore. You can come in here, see what they do have assigned, and make those changes as needed. That is pretty slick. And finally, theming. This is great because you can change the theme if you want to. The downside here is that you don't get the image to see which theme looks like what. So if you wanted to get an idea of what the image should look like, you can't really do that from here. But all the same settings that you manage on the MTR itself can be done right here in the Teams Admin Center. Now, at this stage, we have plugged in all of our Poly G40-T components, powered them up, got signed into the device, took a look at our settings, tweaked anything that we needed to tweak. We went into the Teams Admin Center, saw that our device was there to manage, looked at all the available options. We saw that it was healthy, ready to go. We know that we can manage it fully from the Teams Admin Center. And now it's time to join our first meeting. We have created a meeting using another account and invited the account that is signed in to the Poly G40-T, which is my personal account instead of a room account, but best practice, use a room account. That meeting pops up right here in the upper left-hand corner. It is our Poly G40-T test meeting. And all we have to do now is walk into our meeting room, step right up to the center of room touch controller, our GC8, and click the join button. There we go. Joined us right into the call. Says we're using the Polycom Studio audio. We're using the Poly Studio for our camera as well as our speakers and microphone. You can see that we're in use with the changing of the colors up there. If I were to turn the privacy shade on down here, there we go. We have no more camera. Turn the privacy shade back off, we're back in business. Now, of course, at the bottom of the screen here, we can see all the ways that we can manage our meeting from the center of room console. As is typical with other Microsoft Teams meetings, we've got our camera button down here that lets us toggle our camera on or off. We can mute or unmute ourselves. We can present content if we want to. Using the HDMI cable that is plugged into the GC8, we can share a desktop from our own laptop. We've got a number of other options here, turning on live captions, accessing the keypad, and not allowing attendees to unmute. We can raise our hand, as is a normal thing to do in Microsoft Teams meetings now, and we can manage our volume up or down right here. Finally, when the meeting is all said and done, we can hang up the call. And here we are joined to the other side of that Microsoft Teams meeting from a device sitting opposite the room of the MTR itself. Just wanted to give you a sense of what it's like to have someone join into the meeting being put on the display. I have muted microphones on both sides so that we don't get that horrible echo chamber thing that happens and makes everybody's ears start to bleed. There you go, the Poly G40-T and a Microsoft Teams meeting. And that is the Poly Studio G40-T room system. It consists of the GC8 Touch controller at the front of the room, of course the Poly Studio over here as our camera, microphone, speakers all built in, mountable at the front of the room or capable of sitting right on top of a desk. Let's not forget the Bluetooth remote that comes with it for managing your camera angle, audio, answering calls, all that from a distance. And then right behind me, we talked about the Lenovo Compute that is part of the G40-T setup. Earlier, I mentioned that I'd also be doing a second video on the optional wall mount for your Lenovo Compute. That video is linked in the upper right-hand corner here, so go check that out if you want to know how to put that all together, manage your cable retentions, all that good stuff for a sleek, modern-looking room system. Thanks for watching. As always, it's a pleasure to have you stop by. If you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would greatly appreciate a subscription. Just check out the link at the bottom of the video for that. Please be sure to share this on social media if you found it helpful or know somebody else who might be interested in the Poly G40-T. And I hope we'll see you back here for the next overview video.